EJ, we were about to sit down and record this episode today, and Frank Reich got fired, and then Jeff Saturday, of all people, got hired as the interim head coach of the Indianapolis Colts. I am struggling to form a take on this because it is so completely out of left field. The Frank Reich firing, I understand considering the events of the last couple of years. Jeff Saturday was ESPN analyst, like was a consultant in the past, but to my knowledge wasn't really in the building. And having relationships with the players and the assistants. He does have high school coaching experience. I guess it's relevant, and was obviously a longtime player, so he knows how to operate within an NFL building. But going from ESPN analyst to NFL head coach in a 48-hour time span, I don't know if I have ever seen that before. And we'll do this in two parts. Number one, Jeff Saturday being named. Number two, Frank Reich being fired. On Jeff Saturday being the new head coach of the Indianapolis Colts. What the hell?
Good morning. The NFL, never boring. To me, I think about all the guys in the building, and it is guys in this particular building. Gus Bradley, 33 years of NFL experience, former head coaching experience. John Fox, 40 years of NFL experience, including head coaching experience. Guys that have a lot of NFL experience, like Kevin Mawai, who's only got 6 years of coaching experience, but a lot of time around the league. Scott Milanovich, their quarterbacks coach, 19 years of experience. Scotty Montgomery, 17 years of experience at running back. Tons of NFL experience. And Jim Irsay, your owner, goes, hey, by the way, there's this former player. I really like him. I talk to him all the time. He's a high school coach. He's your boss. That's going to be a really interesting transition because, like we both said, he's not been in the building. There is a rhythm, an ebb, and a flow, and a knowledge within a building. And if you're not there every day, involved in sort of the logistical decisions and the politics and everything else, to be just inserted and be like, hi, I'm your new head coach. You all know me. I was Peyton Center, and we're gonna win.
He was teammates with Reggie, who is a coach on the staff.
Yeah, with 1 year of experience. So there's a lot of choices here. This strikes me as a very Jim Irsay move. Not so much the firing. The firing, like you said, is understandable. I don't necessarily agree with it because of the success rates of in-season coaching changes. However, pretty clear the Colts really aren't going anywhere this year, and Irsay's patience ran out. He chose to fire Reich. I get that. The Saturday thing was a curveball. We were talking about this in normal tones till the Saturday news broke, and then we started talking about it in hysterical tones because it doesn't make a ton of sense from the outside. If it does work out by some miracle, it is an instant Disney movie.
Oh, yeah. Because I don't recall this ever happening before.
The only one that got close that I can think of is like Josh McCown. You remember that? Josh McCown getting head coach interviews as basically a guy with high school coaching experience and
who
lot
was a
of time
player like right before that. Yeah.
Right. Like that was the closest, like, wait. You're going to take a guy with basically no NFL coaching experience and make him an NFL head coach. And there were ripples from that throughout the league from lots of long-time tenured, assistants and folks who were saying, wait, you're not even going to give me a shot, but this guy that was a former player that's never coached, you're going to give him the head spot? And that there was some serious smoke to that fire. This is, in its own, a different animal. It'll be fascinating to see how this plays out. My initial reaction, my gut reaction is not well.
And then on the Frank Reich angle, and my buddy Kyle Yates put out a good tweet about it. Like, you look at the quarterbacks that Frank had, Andrew Luck, Jacoby Brissett, Brian Hoyer, Phillip Rivers, Carson Wentz, and then this year Matt Ryan and Sam Ehlinger, still went 40-33-1, which is a 540 winning percentage over that time, where he never had a starting quarterback for more than a year. That is impressive, like objectively impressive, and Kyle made a good point there. But at the same time, I feel like This organization was so cavalier at the quarterback position, believing that they could just keep bringing people in and that they could just keep building a roster good enough where quarterback play was the least important ingredient. And I think that kind of approach always works until it doesn't, and it demands so much of your GM and your scouts and your capologists to continuously build a roster that can support literally a carousel at quarterback. And so that kind of approach, like as long as the roster is being maintained, you can sort of make it work. And they did sort of make it work. But as soon as you have a down year or you're taking a whole bunch of injuries or you whiff on one draft class, it completely falls apart. And you look at them this year, the offensive line is horrific. Like this is the first year I can remember in a while where the offensive line was this bad. And you combine that with an older quarterback that can't move or a younger quarterback like Ellinger who just doesn't see pressure well, and you have no offense. And the defense is also, other than the defensive line, also super inconsistent. And obviously, Leonard being hurt didn't help things early in the year either. So this approach of we're going to build a great roster and then wing it at quarterback works until it doesn't. And even though Frank Reich as the head coach bears responsibility for that, I also think that Chris Ballard should bear some responsibility for that too, because they knew Anthony Costanzo was retiring. He did it a couple years ago. They had a couple swings at a couple off seasons to make sure that left tackle was not as big a problem as it is, and they failed to do that. So it's kind of on him too, and he's still there, and now Jeff Saturday is the head coach, and the whole situation is beyond messy.
100%. I do not think Ballard is beyond reproach here. In fact, I think he should be squarely in the sights. His approach at quarterback has been don't get fired, like personified. Like since Andrew Luck, they've wanted to squeeze the last bit of juice out of very veteran oranges. That was Phillip Rivers at the very tail end of his career. Hey, maybe we can get that one last spark out of the bottle. To an extent, Carson Wentz, we can salvage him. We can get him for cheap. Maybe we can return him to mid-level heights, and that'll be good enough with our roster. With Matt Ryan this year, we really thought he had stuff left in the tank. He showed it last year in Atlanta. Unfortunately, he fell off a cliff physically sometime during the offseason. And this has been but I got names, but I built the team. This is the checkbox approach to building a team, which is please don't fire me because I don't want to take a swing at a young quarterback who, if they flame out, I'm definitely getting fired. Mm-hmm. So like you said, that approach works until it doesn't. And I think Irsay is to the point where he's ready to take the big swing. In fact, he's going to need to because, as you pointed out, and we had written into the script last night before this happened, the other areas on this team are not spotless. The defensive line is strong. Linebackers have been okay. Some of that's Shaq Leonard energy. Some of that's not. The secondary has dropped off a little bit. The offensive line has dropped off a lot. And they've stacked some playmakers, but without a quarterback, that's sort of less import. So this is not a team, and we'll talk about this later, that's one player away. Even if they do get that stud young quarterback and he does work out, which is, again, a smaller percentage each time you say it, they're not just going to waltz back to contention. It's going to take a little bit, and that may end up costing Ballard his job anyways.
Now, one project, Jeff Saturday, if he's going to be there, the one project I want him to tackle is Bernhard Raimann. Because that is the significant swing that Ballard did take to try to replace Costanzo. Mm-hmm. And to say it's been up and down is an understatement. They got to fix him so that whatever quarterback they're going with next year, whether it's Stroud or Bryce Young or Levis, whoever, they got to fix Bernhard Raimann. Because the 2 sacks he gave up yesterday, that's only the beginning. And we knew he was a project. Full disclosure, we knew he was a project, but like, their answer at left tackle was a project that they thought they could fix up a lot quicker than they are, which is a failure on Ballard's part, but also a failure on the coaching staff's part. They got to fix him because if they don't fix him, then they're really screwed. They're already screwed, but they're screwed even more if they don't fix him. So I don't know. If I'm a Colts fan, I don't even know how to react to today because a lot of Colts fans wanted Reich gone. I don't think that Jeff Saturday was their moonshot for a replacement, so there are probably a lot of mixed feelings here. I think they just want the season to be over and they want to move on to the draft. I think that's where we're at.
I don't doubt that. We're going to talk about them more later on, but let's roll the intro and get into the rest of the show.
Let's do it. All right, EJ, we have a ton of games and a ton of storylines to talk about today. I'm not going to waste too much time in the intro. First things first, thank you to all of our executive producers, Marat, Consti, Caden, Andrew, Taylor, and Liam. Everybody in the executive producer tier on Patreon for helping to make this show possible. We appreciate you guys. We love you guys. And with that, let's get into these games. First one. Now that we've had a while, almost a week to digest it, let's talk about that Thursday night matchup between Philly and Houston now that we've gone back and watched the tape. I think that our original impressions, not just of the Eagles, but of the Texans, were fairly accurate during the live stream last week. But going back and specifically watching the tape and all the Dameon Pierce carries over and over and over again, I think even for me, who's a massive Jordan Davis fan, I totally underestimated how important Jordan Davis was for that defense. They could not stop the run without him. It was bad. It was horrific. And I know the Eagles still won comfortably, but if they're going up against a team that can really run the ball and Jordan Davis isn't there and he isn't healthy because he's still coming back from that ankle, a team that's better than Houston will beat them because that was bad. That was straight up bad.
They were able to control a lot of the game, the clock, and we talked about this in the open on Thursday night. If you came in early, half an hour before kickoff, you heard me say Eagles are giving up 5.2 per rush. Mm-hmm. Now, the scoring defense is okay, and the secondary's been amazing, highly opportunistic. But from a core perspective, like you said, if you get a very powerful rushing team, like, say, cough, cough, Tennessee, and they want to come in and impose their will that way, they can do it against the Eagles without Jordan Davis.
And the Titans, by the way, do play them on December 4th, so coming up pretty soon here. It's going to be a cold game in Philly. Davis should maybe on paper be back by then, but you know how ankles are. They're really finicky. That is going to be a pretty crazy matchup. And then, right after that, they got against Saquon and then the Bears, who can also, by the way, run the ball. And then you got Dallas. They can run the ball. You got the Saints and then another matchup with Saquon. So most of the teams in the back half of the schedule can run and run a lot. That's one area they're going to have to shore up if they want to, A, stay unbeaten, and B, keep pace for the number one seed in the conference. On the flip side of things, Jalen Hurts, man. The growth, I know we talk about it every week. The growth for him just continues to astound. He was dealing early and often. Him plus A.J. Brown plus Devonta plus Goddard plus, getting the backs involved in the passing game. It's almost like a damned if you do, damned if you don't approach because Miles Sanders can rip off a big gain, and then you got A.J. Brown just out-muscling people with his 230-pound frame. You got Devontae being silky smooth over the middle. It's an extraordinarily hard offense to defend because it's not even like they do anything fancy. They don't do anything crazy. They just out-talent people, and they trust Hurts that we've got a one-on-one, hit the throw, and he'll hit the throw. Hey, we don't got a good look here. See if you can make something happen to your legs. He'll do it. Like, he and AJ and Devonta just out-talent everybody. And when they really need to, their offensive line averages 320 pounds. Like, they can lean on you and run it as well. So I really don't know what the game plan is to stop them at this point. I don't even know if they can be stopped. And at some point, obviously, the run defense will come back to bite them. But offensively speaking, what do you do? I got no answers.
To me, they look like the NFC flip side to the AFC's Dolphins in terms of They have a quarterback that understands the system. He is accurate and now quick in terms of his decision making. He's got weapons at every level, at every layer, wherever he looks. In fact, Philly's weapons, maybe not quite as good in the receiving game as the Dolphins, but pretty close. And in the rushing game, maybe a little bit better. So they both have good tight ends. You just can't cover everybody. And when it all breaks down, I would rather have Jalen Hurts running the ball than Tua. So,
not even close.
It's one more X factor of, oh, by the way, you happen to get decent coverage on everybody this time. Oops, you didn't account for Jalen. He's going to pick up the easy first down with his legs. So it's really fun to watch both of those teams and the growth of both of those quarterbacks. But Jalen's ability to hit those shots outside the numbers with touch that he's done for the past sort of 3 weeks really changes their offense. Before he was working over the middle, working the edges, occasionally a shot down the seam. Now he's hitting that seam, not seam ball, boundary ball to AJ. And that's just a whole different thing. It's making somebody cover every inch of grass, and that makes them extremely dangerous.
Also, side note, when A.J. Brown got paid $25 million a year, a lot of people kind of were like, I don't know. I hope you've realized at this point $25 million is plenty for A.J. Brown. He's 100% worth it. There was a graphic last night during the Titans game where he has single-handedly outproduced the entire Titans receiving corps. So, yeah, $25 million seems fair. I think he's worth it. Now,
and look at all the teams that don't have that receiver this year.
Oh, they're all struggling.
The
all
Titans, we said it time and again throughout the summer preview series. You gotta have the alpha. You gotta have the go-to. You gotta have a number one. And if you don't have a number one, or you think you have two, you probably don't have one. We talked about Jamar Chase last year and his difference he made. And then you see by subtraction, A.J. Brown goes from the Titans to the Eagles. The Eagles' offense comes up. The Titans' offense struggles on those. Gotta have it outside receiving downs. It's a thing, folks.
There were some throws that Malik Willis made last night that were objectively really good throws that receivers didn't come down with. And I knew, I was like, A.J. would have caught that shit. Because he did when he was in Tennessee. The one-handers, he would have caught that shit. So... Again, not to belabor the point, I know Titans fans, last night was painful for you, and you hate AJ because he keeps trolling you on Twitter. Titans fans despise him. But you got to admit, he's worth the $25 million. Now, as for my prize pick slip, which for the first time in a while got completely blown up by this game, I bet on Dameon Pierce, but I bet on receiving, not rushing. I didn't anticipate the Eagles' run defense would be as bad as it was, so he picked up pretty much, actually literally, all of his yardage on the ground. And because he was so successful at running, Davis Mills didn't have to throw as much as I thought he would, so I missed on the over for pass attempts for him. The aforementioned A.J. Brown got a receiving touchdown, so I missed on that one. And then Hurts cracked the over on his passing yards because he was just throwing at will early in that game. So I got 1 out of 5 on that slip. First time, I think, all year I've done that poorly. Most of the time I've hit. But, week 9, finally getting got. I'd say I had a pretty good run there.
You had a really good run, but sometimes it's a funny game. The ball bounces interesting ways. And you're talking about your Jalen Hurts bet. It was like 236.5. He went 243.
I know. It was
did
tight.
Miss by a lot. Now, the Dameon Pierce thing I won't forgive you for because you didn't ask me pregame. And I would have said, wait, which is what I said when you announced it. Wait, receiving, not rushing? However, that would have been, 2 out of 5. You still would have been looking at sort of insurance territory, not a clean win. But overall, you're up for the season.
Yeah, overall, I'm still way up for this season. We're gonna try to make up ground this Thursday. We have a very quick rematch between the Falcons and the Panthers on Thursday night, who just went toe-to-toe a couple weeks ago in an OT thriller. And I think if the Falcons win this game, they're back in contention for division lead because Tampa lost. And if New Orleans loses tonight, God, the NFC South is so bad.
Tampa didn't lose.
Oh, you're right. Tom came back. That's the thing, is that game felt so awful. And they were so bad for most of it. I totally forgot about the last 2 minutes. We'll talk about that game soon. But so I can't remember now if the Falcons are eligible to get back the division lead on Thursday. But they're still
in the
thick
mix,
of it.
which is regardless, that's impressive.
So stop on by again Thursday night. We got Falcons Panthers. We're going to do some film study over the next couple of days and figure out exactly which Falcons running back we want to put our money behind. Maybe we'll do both because both Algier and Patterson are having success, and then we're going to figure out if there's literally any redeeming thing with the Panthers that we can bet on. Hope you guys will come by and watch that likely shit show of a game with us. Remember, if you want to fill out your slips also for the Thursday game or for the Sunday games or the Monday game, any game you want, Prize Picks will match your deposit up to $100 with promo code bootleg. So I'll tell you what, for a bad football game, that's one way to make it interesting. I know that's what we're going to be doing. So hopefully you guys join us in a couple days. And with that, EJ, let's get to 3 Up. 3 Up number 1. God, I've been waiting for this for a long time. The Bears offense. I know they lost, but we've talked a lot of good things about the Dolphins this year, so we have to acknowledge the Bears came close and almost won that game and were a very questionable non-pass interference call away from maybe getting a chance to tie it. But the Bears offense for the last 3 games has looked more than functional for 3 straight weeks. So consider this 3 Up like a collective, hey, the Bears are going on a little bit of an offensive run here. The run game is phenomenal, anchored by Justin Fields, oddly enough. They're doing a lot of concepts that we see in Baltimore. They'll call QB belly, which means like they're running a pin and pull with Justin behind a lead block from the running back. They're calling zone reads. They're calling counter bash. All the stuff you see in Baltimore, they're calling that with Justin Fields. And he got 178 rushing yards, which is the most ever in the regular season for a quarterback in NFL history. That offense, beyond just Justin's rushing ability, the complementary rushing ability that Monty and Herbert have, and then you just hit a couple good balls down the field per game to either Mooney or Cole Kmet sometimes. Like that's all they need is just a couple big chunks through the air, and the run game does the rest. It reminds me a lot of the early Lamar Jackson offenses in Baltimore that were still very effective, even though they didn't throw that much. Same thing in Chicago. Still very effective, even though they're not throwing that much, but very hard to prepare for, very hard to defend. And I'll tell you what, 30 points is 30 points. In the last 3 weeks, they're putting up like 30 points a game, and I'll take it.
This is a seminal moment for the Bears franchise. And onlookers who are not fans, who've been sort of, hey, is Justin Fields the thing? Do they believe in him? Are they going to support him? Is he the real deal? Are they going to replace him? Over and done with. Everybody knows it now. All the defensive coordinators know it now. You're seeing his potential realized over the last 3 weeks since the mini-bye. They had a 10-day break after a Thursday game, and Eberflus and his staff, Ryan Poles, sat down with every player on the roster, said, what are we doing well? What are we not doing well? They took a very hard look at all their offensive concepts and said, what can we port? What can we bring in to really accentuate strengths and get rid of the stuff that's not working? Not every coaching staff does that rigorously, and a lot of them will continue to do things that are working not well or averagely. They swept all that crap out, and the offense has looked completely different since then. They started primarily designing runs for Justin Fields and not just scrambles, but designed quarterback runs. And there's a huge difference in how you set your offense up. And the results have been staggering, quite frankly. Justin Fields broke the most rush yards in a regular season game by a QB. That was Mike Vick's record. He put up 178. But more importantly, the run game as a whole is ridiculous and historic. So the Bears joined the 76 Steelers as the only teams in the Super Bowl era with at least 225 rushing yards in 4 consecutive games. And they're also the first team since the 1978 New England Patriots with at least 200 rushing yards in 4 straight contests. So This is not a little bit. This is not, we played some bad defenses. And I want to give the Dolphins their flowers. I was on with Travis Wingfield, our buddy, who is the Dolphins PR guy, and was on the Drive Time podcast with him previewing the Bears, and we talked about the run game. He specifically brought up the backs. He knew Travis is a really well-informed guy, but the fact that they have been setting this pace for multiple weeks, basically a month now, and they're getting it from both backs, and now Justin on top of it at this ridiculous historic pace. The Dolphins are a really good team. This is not a bad football team. This is a 100% for real, very complete football team playing well together. And they barely survived Justin Fields going supernova to get the win. Now, they did earn the win, and I want to give Miami its props. Great team, great coaching, good win, and well earned, because this was not a fluke. All the DCs that are left on the Bears' schedule are now currently scratching their heads going, WTF. What in the hell am I going to do about Justin Fields' ability to break open a game basically whenever he wants at will? The 60-plus yard touchdown, he broke 20 miles an hour. He is the only quarterback with multiple 20-plus mile an hour runs this year in the NFL. 61 yards, the sort of acceleration from when he pump faked and hopped to through the linebackers, that 4 to 6 yards, that little snippet was different. He broke like 4 tackling angles with just pure burst. It wasn't wiggle. It was just, I'm going to gun it, and I'm going to be farther along than you thought I was, and you're going to be diving in my wake. That's not regular. That's rare. NFL players are very used to fast players. They see them every week. It was faster than that. So when you get a guy with that much speed, that much running ability, who is now running with confidence and then can open up his arm and make some of the throws that he made throughout that game, defensive coordinators who have to face Justin Fields for the rest of this stretch are no longer going, this is going to be a pretty cool week. Like, the Bears offense can't put up more than 20 points. Like, we're good. All I got to do is hold them below 21 and we're going to win the game. Now they're going, can I hold them below 30? I'm not sure that I can. If you give Justin Fields a couple of more offensive line pieces, and that is coming back to health, Cody Whitehair was back. Riley Reif is now the starting right tackle, apparently, based on snap counts. You saw what that's going to do. You surround him with some more weapons. They did that with Chase Claypool, who was featured heavily in like 38% of the offensive snaps for his first week in town.
They wasted no time getting him on the field.
And he looked pretty comfortable, too. So if you continue that pace, you grab a couple more offensive line pieces, you grab another receiver, and maybe a receiving tight end, you've already got the backs and Justin Fields, this is going to be a real offense. And folks in Chicago are sighing a very, very deep and long-standing sigh of relief. The Bears have never had the guy. I'm going to tell it to you right now. The Bears have the guy, and everybody knows it.
By the way, one more note on that 61-yard touchdown was basically completely on accident. Because if you look at it, they called mesh on 3rd and 5, which is like a classic 3rd and medium call. It was a cover 3 zone. Mooney was settling over the middle. And because of that really quick pressure coming off the edge, Fields was stepping up and sliding to his left, and he wanted to open up his hips to come back to Mooney. But as he was starting to slide, Mooney thought he was just going to run. And so Mooney then wheeled down and went down the field. And so Justin was like hopping and almost, because he played shortstop when he was a baseball player, it was the same mechanics where he's like jumping and opening as if he's like, turning 2 or something like that. And then he saw Mooney wheeling, was like, oh shit, and pulled it down in midair and then took off and scored on it. But like, that was supposed to be a pass. Like, he was going to throw it, and then Mooney just misread it. And he still made it work. He still scored on that play. So what I found encouraging about it, beyond just the fact that he's a freak in nature, was that he wasn't just running to run. Like, he wanted to throw. He was moving to throw and then had no other option but to run. But he's a guy that when he has no other option and he has to run, he can still score. So yeah, he's a special, special talent. And the Bears are very lucky to have him. And this is the first time in a while where I feel like we're kind of out of the dark ages. Like, we're out of the time period where we're questioning and we're wondering and we're hoping. Like, it feels like this is real and tangible, and the success is sustainable. And obviously long term, just like long-term for the Ravens. They got to do more, but it's going to work for this year. And going into the offseason, they have a gazillion dollars and a whole bunch of picks to work with. And as long as they hit on this offseason, the Bears will be good. Like, they absolutely will be good. I feel it in my bones.
100+ million going into free agency, full slate of draft picks. Even with the one they traded away for Chase Claypool, they still have another second-round pick. It is a complete reset, and that has been Ryan Poles' goal since the day he took over, is clear the books, clear the decks, get rid of everything that Pace and Nagy did, get us a clean horizon for 2023. And so this was supposed to be the lost year, but big props to Luke Getsy.
Mm-hmm.
Luke Getsy leaves Green Bay and comes to Chicago. And look at what's happened in Chicago, especially since the mini-bye, and look at what is currently happening in Green Bay. Like, Luke Getsy deserves his flowers, his credit. What he has done is something that no offensive coordinator in Chicago has done in the last 10+ years, which is custom design a working offensive plan designed around quarterback strengths. And we're seeing the fruits of that with a very talented quarterback in Justin Fields. Getsy deserves a huge amount of praise.
Yeah, I don't know what to do with myself, EJ. I'm optimistic.
It's
weird. It's fucking weird.
It is a very uncomfortable place to be as a Bears fan. We're happy, but we're like, wait, what? We're good? Wait, on offense? What?
Speaking of uncomfortable optimism, 3-up number 2, the Jets beat the Bills. And not even like, weird, they shouldn't have won, but they won kind of way. Like, no, they beat the Bills. They, like, talent versus talent, beat the Bills. Even without Breece Hall, even with injuries, and, God, Lord knows the Jets have had a lot of offensive line injuries this year. The defense played phenomenally well. Michael Carter was very efficient on the ground. Zach Wilson didn't give the game away with dumb turnovers. Like, they absolutely straight up, toe-to-toe, blow for blow, beat the Bills. That being said, I do want to make a quick point. If I have one takeaway about this game that isn't positive on the Jets, and there's a lot of positive we can talk about for the Jets. For the Bills specifically, every single Bills loss looks the same, which is either they can't run the ball or won't run the ball. In this case, they couldn't because the Jets' defensive line is that good, and Quinnen Williams is a freaking nightmare. So they couldn't run the ball. And when teams know that they won't run because the Bills always abandon the run at the first sight of difficulty, all of a sudden that kind of opens up everything else, and they can tee off with stunts and they can fly up the field. When they don't have to worry about Devin Singletary getting 15 to 16 carries, and they know it's going to be a pass every single time, they can completely tee off. And we saw, once again, Josh's old nemesis pop up, which is teams play like cover 2 or quarter half or cover 4. They kind of just put a cap over the top of the long game or on top of the deep ball. And they don't give him the deep crosses, and they don't give him 4 verticals, and they take away like the big post on the backside of Y cross. And when he is forced into quick throw, scramble, another quick throw, when he's forced into doing these like 10, 11 play drives where he has to do everything because they're not running the ball, he gets frustrated. And when he gets frustrated, he makes mistakes. And those 2 picks were horrific because he was frustrated and aggressive and just wants it all right now. Like that pick that Sauce got on him, same thing that happened against Miami. It's cover 2. And Sauce is sinking. Like, it's a very simple read. Read the hang corner. If he's sinking, don't throw that ball. And he did it anyway. And it's not like he was hit as he threw or anything like that. Like, he was looking at Sauce and just thought, yeah, I could fit it in there. No, you can't. He's a top 5 corner this year. You can't fit it in, Josh. Throw it literally anywhere else. And he's just... I am so frustrated because every Bills loss is the same. They can't run the ball. They put it all on Allen. He gets frustrated. He makes mistakes. He turns it over. How many times are we going to have to watch this game before they learn their lesson? Run the fucking ball. I don't care if you're getting 3 yards a carry. You have to at least convince them that you're willing to do it, or they're going to keep doing this to Josh. Mind-blowing to me. Mind-blowing that we're like 4 years into this same problem and they still won't fix it.
Well, they did fix it, and that's the really frustrating part about this entire take. First things first, credit to the Jets. We'll talk about the Bills in a second, but credit to the Jets. We've talked about it for the last 3 weeks in a row, that the roster building, especially the defensive line rotation and all the pressure they can bring, the secondary playing at an insane level, Sauce just being Sauce. I said he was that guy. He's that guy. No surprise. Jets won this game. And if you want to give flowers to the Jets, it's Zach Wilson. Played not great in the first half, looked scattered and all over the place, came out in the second half, and you could tell that the coaches had sat him down and said, stop it. Stay in the pocket. Stay on schedule. Run the reads, and we will win this game. And he did. He came out. He was like, it looked like he was on a 10-foot leash from the center. He just stayed in the pocket, threw the ball on time. They started moving the ball. It was just a complete mirror image. The Bills had fixed this problem. When we saw him in the opening game in SoFi, the thing that was amazing was he was willing to. He was so willing to wait. He was cool as a cucumber, and we looked at each other and said, that's it. That's the unlock. He's unbeatable now.
They were willing to do the 12-play drive, yes.
If he will wait, it's patience, right? Patience was his superpower early in this season. Early in this season, that's the thing that makes it so frustrating to talk about this, is they had it. They had it dicked. They unlocked this, right? They had it. And somehow, over the last 3 weeks, really in the last 3 weeks, about 3 weeks ago, we started to see the cracks. We saw it against Green Bay. He made a couple of these throws, and we said, oh, we have code for that. It's old Josh or bad Josh or whatever. And I put out a tweet this week that said, oop, bad Josh popped his head up early. That's not a good sign. He's getting frustrated. And when he had that patience, it was like armor, because he can do mechanically all the 10, 12 play drive stuff easily. Like it's baby steps for him. That's the thing. It's so far below his capacity that he's like, I want to turn it up. You know what it reminds me a little bit? Remember Bull Durham?
God, I haven't seen that in 10 years.
Nuke Lelouch, right?
Yeah.
I want to bring the heat. I want to establish my presence with authority. It's like, Josh, like, I can throw the 60-yard bomb. Let's go. And it's Kevin Costner or whoever it is in the Bills organization, whether it's Dorsey or somebody else, going, give me a changeup on the outside corner. I want to throw the changeup. I got this cannon on my right side. I want to use it, right? And when he didn't do that, when he threw the changeup, he was a more complete pitcher. He was a better quarterback. He was basically unstoppable because, again, he has all the answers. We talked about it with Jalen Hurts earlier, that like he's got all these weapons, and when he doesn't, Josh is a human tractor trailer. He can run people over, so good luck with that. The one thing that's his Achilles heel is this, I want to turn it loose. I want to force the ball. I want to get it done right now. And he's got to back off that. He's got to get back to where he was at the beginning of the season, be patient, run the 10, 12 play drives, scramble for 7, and just frustrate the hell out of him on 3rd and 6, right? Just do that over and over again. You can't beat him at that point, but he can beat himself by throwing a couple of bad picks, especially when they're right down in the red zone like they were early in the game. That is just the thing he needs to avoid the most, and if they can't get him off that, run the ball or not, they're going to struggle because defensive coordinators have this plan. They, too, have been watching the last 3 games, and they know what the blueprint is, and he's going to see it over and over again because the NFL is a copycat league, and they're going to make him until he proves that he can be patient, and then they'll have to do something else. And there's not a lot of good answers at that point.
Unfortunately for Buffalo, they are hanging on to the first seed by a thread because they're 6-2 because they've had a bye week. I have to double check on exactly what the rules are in terms of how the seeds are calculated when one team has more games and thus more losses than the other. But 2 teams that have beat them also have 6 wins, and the Chiefs have 6 wins, and the Ravens are right behind them at 5, and the Titans. I don't want to completely write off the Titans yet because every time I do, they come back and they surge. But, like, they're hanging on to the 1 seed by an absolute thread. And I'm talking by, like, half a game over the Jets and Dolphins. And if the Bills lose again, and they're all sitting at 7-3, they're a wild card team. Like, I think they would actually technically be a 7 seed, or at least minimum a 6 seed. So you can either be first or you can be a 6 seed, depending on this AFC East race. They cannot afford to drop games like this. They kind of have to run the table for the rest of the season, to be honest, just to keep pace. And I'll tell you what, if you told me before the season that 3 AFC East teams would all need to go like 14-3 to have a realistic shot at the 1 seed, I would call you crazy, but that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, it's something that's very interesting about the NFL, and this is why they play the games. This is why there's parity. This is why it's a fun league to watch. 6 of the 6+ win teams out of 8 in the league right now are in the East.
Oh, between AFC and NFC? Yeah.
AFC East has 3, NFC East has 3, which is probably the bigger surprise, but still, I don't think most people would have put the Jets there. And it does make these races for the divisional crowns really, really tight.
Mm-hmm.
And all of it concentrated in the East is exactly opposite, because, of course, we said it was going to be the AFC West. So, of course, that was doomed from the start. But all the power is in the East right now. And somebody's, Cowboys technically, or yeah, whatever. Anyways, they're in the East. We're counting them in the East. It makes it very, very difficult for those teams that are very good within those divisions but are not going to win the divisional crown. Their margin gets really thin. And it's just a factor of, how they stack up and where the divisions lay and how good those teams are. But 6 of the 8 6-win teams are in 2 divisions, and they're all in the East.
We could have legitimately on both conferences 2 wild card teams with 12+ wins. Correct. For each conference. That's fucking insane. And also it guarantees that we're going to get divisional rematches in the playoffs, which are always fun because they're filled with a little bit of extra hate. A little bit of extra hate. All right, 3 up, number 3. Seahawks Cardinals. Speaking of unexpected things happening in the West, the Seahawks are arguably the best team in the NFC West. Now, a healthy Niners. Do I think a healthy Niners would beat them? Probably. But the Niners, when's the last time they were actually fully healthy? I truly can't remember at this point. So for now, based on current health projections, I would say the Seahawks are the best team in the NFC West. And they are certainly a hell of a lot better than the Arizona Cardinals. The Arizona Cardinals are a freaking mess. Whereas the Seahawks, were not for one weird kind of turnover, probably would have blew them out. Like, they were very close to completely blowing this team out. And even then, even after that turnover, I still kind of felt like, they're probably fine. And they were. Like, they are just top to bottom from the quarterback position. Like, Geno is playing better at quarterback than Kyler, and I don't even really think it's particularly close. The run game is better. Kenneth Walker, he's incredible. 26 carries for $109 and 2 more touchdowns. He's explosive. He can run inside. He can run outside. He breaks tackles. It doesn't even matter what kind of scheme you give him, whether it's zone, gap, anything like that. Like, he can run anything. He is absolutely who we thought he was going to be. The receivers, DK and Lockett, are both on pace for 1,000 yards. The young offensive line, especially at tackles, are playing well. They have some incredible defensive pieces that are playing like Pro Bowlers this year. Both of their rookie corners, Tariq Woolen and Kobe Bryant. Uchenna Nwosu, who was your favorite going into this offseason in terms of a low-key addition, has got, 7 sacks already or something like that?
Yeah, he's tied with Von Miller. We all knew that was going to happen, right?
It's incredible. Like, this team from top to bottom, by far better than the Cardinals. But I would even say better than the Niners right now, because the Niners just can't get healthy. And even then, when the Niners are healthy, the Seahawks would still give them a game. Like, they absolutely would give them a game. And, neutral field, it would be a tough line to project. So I think Seahawks are making the playoffs, which, going into the year when everybody thought they were going to be in the running for the first overall pick, well, not everybody. You and I thought they were, going to be better than that. But I didn't think they were going to be a playoff team. Like, I'm not that arrogant to pretend like that's what my projection was. They are far exceeding everybody's expectations except probably their own. And, credit to them for that.
Always. Nobody believed in this team. We believed in it more than average. A lot of people said this was going to be the worst team in the NFL. If it wasn't them, it was the Bears. And we said, we think they're going to be better than that. But if you had said, oh, winning the division, no, neither one of us predicted that they would even be in contention for the division. And they are winning it handily right now. Make no mistake. This is a real team that can take a punch. Because Geno came out through that horrendous pick early on. And if you're not a complete team at that point, you start going, oh no. After the pick, Geno went 10 for 12 for 123 yards and a touchdown, 7 for 7 on third down conversions, 2 rushes for 31 yards to keep drives moving, and 2 TD drives. And he was pressing for a third before I stopped taking stats. That's not his stat line for the whole game. That is directly after the pick. That's what he did. Geno is the unquestioned leader of this team. He's got 6 games with a 100-plus passer rating. That leads the National Football League. So in terms of who he's playing better than, the answer is just about everybody. We're not talking about overall talent ceiling. We're not saying that, Geno Smith is a better prospect than Josh Allen. We're saying right now, in terms of efficiency, Geno is playing in the top tier of quarterbacks in the NFL, and that's not arguable. Talked about Etienne and Wosu. Both of the corners who've made plays throughout. The rookies continue to contribute and sort of drive this team forward. And there's a feeling around this team. Being in the Pacific Northwest, this is a fun team. This is a fun team to root for, and it's far more interesting to watch. And that's the one take I got right at preseason was this team's going to be more fun for me to watch than the past 3 or 4 years because the Seahawks were they had a boilerplate, and they would do things the same way, and it usually played out the same way on the field, and then Russ would have to come to save them, either whether it was late in games or late in the season, and they wouldn't quite make it over the hump. That was the Seahawks recipe, and then they just blew it the hell up. They traded Russ, they got a ton of picks, and I said, no matter what happens, it's going to be more interesting. It's going to be more fun. Have they exceeded all my expectations? Yes, every single one of them. Do I think they are for real and can push deep into the playoffs? At this point, I do. They are growing together. They are believing, and they are taking down foes, and they look like they expect to. This is not the happy to be there team, not even close. They are believing that they can roll over certainly their own division, but probably play with most teams in the NFC. And until I see somebody prove them wrong, I'm going to roll right with them.
The game that I most want to see right now, out of any matchup in the league, Seahawks-Eagles.
100%.
I think that would be a war. Like from start to finish, that would be a freaking war, especially if the Eagles still can't stop the run, because I'm sorry, Kenneth Walker is getting like 300 yards in that game.
I would love to see that game. I think the Eagles have a good chance to win that game for all the things we just talked about, the Eagles that are positive.
Probably.
Your assertion that the 49ers would win right now, I don't think I'm going on that plank with you. I think the Seahawks would beat the pants off the 49ers straight up on a neutral field right now.
Banged up 49ers, yeah, probably. Healthy 49ers, I don't know.
Healthy 49ers, it would be close. They wouldn't beat the pants off them, but I still think the Seahawks win that game, whereas straight up neutral field, both teams healthy, Eagles, Seahawks, I think Eagles still win that game because overall they're farther along in their plan and they are more talented, but I don't think it would be the blowout that people think it would be.
I just hope we get those matchups in January. I really do, because those are the ones I really care about. Like, I would love to see a Seahawks-Eagles. I would love to see, 49ers-Giants. That would fascinate me. Completely fascinate me. It
would be super fun. Stylistically,
oh, yeah.
That game, Giants-49ers, would be really cool to see how it played out and to see how the coordinators called that game, both D'Amico Ryans versus Dable. Oh, yes, yeah. Please. Come on, show me that. So those are the matchups that we root for, that we hope for as NFL fans, just like you do. We want to see top against top. And right now, there's no way to slice it other than the Seahawks are at the top, and they're one of those teams, and they belong there.
This week's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Raycon, and I've been using these things a lot lately because I've been flying so much across the country, and the battery life is really good, so they're kind of my go-to flying earbuds. But I also use them for Zoom meetings and media interviews on my laptop, or just out by the river when I go hiking and biking, and they've never let me down in any of those instances. The audio quality is great. There's noise isolation, there's multiple sound profiles, and the in-ear fit is excellent too. The battery life, like I mentioned, lasts a long time. It's about 8 hours per charge with 32 hours of battery life total. But the best part is price, because it's a good quality product with all of those features, but for way less money than a lot of other premium earbuds are marked up for. It's like 30% of the cost because you're not paying extra just for branding and status. So if you just want a good set of wireless earbuds, either for yourself or as a gift for anyone else this holiday season that needs a new pair, you can go to buyraycon.com and use promo code EARLYBF. That is all one word, EARLYBF, and that will give you 20% off your order site-wide. Or you can save even bigger and get 30% off Raycon's exclusive holiday bundles. Again, that is buyraycon.com, promo code EARLYBF, that's all one word, for either 20% off site-wide or 30% off the holiday bundles. Thank you again to Raycon for supporting us and this show, and with that, let's get back to it. All right, that's enough pleasantries. Unfortunately, we have to get to 3 down. Okay, 3 down number 1. We didn't get to touch on it earlier because we were so focused on all of the crazy coaching news. We got to talk about the Colts offensive line. 9 sacks is horrific and terrible, and there's multiple ways that you can look at any team giving up 9 sacks because it's hard to just blame one thing. Some are on the quarterback, some are on the offensive line, some are on the running back, some are on communication, some are on just getting beat. But regardless, as a whole, giving up 9 sacks to the Patriots is the low point of the season for the Colts. It was the worst offensive performance of the season for them, and that's saying a lot. I really don't even know where to go from here. Like, how is Jeff Saturday supposed to fix this when he has literally no coaches on his staff that have ever called plays in the NFL? What is he supposed to do about that?
This is not good. Like, you talk about building from the inside out on any team, and Ballard is a huge believer in that, both offensive line and defensive line. He's invested many of his high picks on both sides of the ball, but the Colts offensive line right now, I think people were giving it grace with the retirements of the tackles. You talked about Costanzo earlier, and it doesn't deserve grace anymore. The offensive line looks really cooked, and one of the scariest parts of that is Quentin Nelson, who has been an NFL god literally since his entry, all-pro caliber player since being drafted, which is incredibly rare, looks lost on certain downs, and it's unsettling. He has been rooted out by guys like Tim Settle in Buffalo. He got whooped by Dietrich Wise Jr. in this game. It's really tough to say anything about Sam Erlinger. I feel really bad for Sam Erlinger. He's a tough guy. He's a Texas kid. He stood in there like a gunslinger and took his shots, but anytime you're taking 9 sacks, it's pretty impossible to grade anything about quarterback play because the basis of your offense, which is protection and run blocking coming from the offensive line, is completely shattered. On the flip side, really glad we talked about Matt Judon a couple of weeks ago, so we're not Johnny-come-lately bandwaggers on this one. Judon hasn't slowed up since we mentioned him a couple of weeks ago. He has 11.5 sacks to lead the league right now because of his fiesta yesterday. But in case you've been listening to us and you know that sacks are fickle and sometimes they're cyclical, it's not a mistake for Judon. He's also second in the league with 43 pressures, so he's been earning it. But the rest of our defensive line just poured it on yesterday, and Sam Erlinger had no shot. Neither did the Colts at that point.
He's sitting duck.
So what this runs down to, and keep in mind I wrote this last night before Frank Reich got fired, this team's in a weird spot. They have no QB. They have very few answers on the offensive line right now. And I wrote, they may be in line for some real changes in the offseason, or, tomorrow morning if Jim Irsay is your owner. Team building wise, they're in this weird limbo land where they're too talented for a total teardown. If you look at the talent end to end on the Colts roster, it's pretty good. It's not bottom of the league by any stretch, but they're not talented enough to be 1 or 2 players away. You can't say if you just naturally import Bryce Young or CJ Stroud or pick your quarterback prospect of the future that they're automatically going to bounce right back up and be leading the division. They're not. They have some sort of deep-seated rot on the offensive line that they need to root out and fix. We talked about Bernard Ryman and needing to sort of reclaim him as a project or move him along. But they have a ton of playmakers on offense that they've assembled. They have some very good players on the defensive line, the linebacking core. Secondary needs some work. So it's just this weird place where they're not good enough, but they're not bad enough. They're right in the middle, and they're really going to have to decide, is this a all the way to the studs teardown, which would be an aggressive move and probably wouldn't be done by Ballard because that's not his style, or is this a sort of keep pounding, keep chipping away, definitely we need a quarterback, it's going to take a couple of years for him to get up to speed, and we'll add other pieces as we go. It's going to be fascinating to see how that happens if Ballard survives, and if he doesn't, how his successor takes on what is probably a bigger project than Colts fans would like to really acknowledge that it is right now.
I think project is the proper term for it, because this team as a whole is a project that they have to fix. There are some young pieces that I still think have a chance to be developed. Michael Pittman's already there. He's already that dude. But, like, I would love for, Reggie Wayne, regardless of what happens with the staff next year, I would love Reggie Wayne to stay on and help develop Alec Pierce. I would love for them to find a way to develop Ryman into a serviceable left tackle like we alluded to earlier. I would love for them to get Braden Smith back, playing the level he was before, where he was one of the best right tackles in the league. Even Quentin Nelson is having a down year. He's not, in my opinion, he's not playing terrible, but he's on pace to allow the most pressures of his career, which is like 25, 26 or something like that, which by his standards is still 80% more than we're used to him giving up at like 12 to 15. So there's a lot of good pieces here that I would love to see developed, and I would love for them to, whoever the new coaching staff is, to take that core and get them to where we think they can be. At the same time, there are some pretty bloated contracts that they're going to have to get rid of and do kind of like a little mini accelerated tear down around that young core that we like so much. Because that young core, as we found out, can't do everything by themselves. They are not good enough yet to carry the team when the quarterback is a statue, or in Ellinger's case, when the quarterback doesn't see pressure that well. They are not at that point yet where they can carry the quarterback position. So I would like to see kind of an accelerated teardown where we get rid of some bad contracts. We build around the core with, as many cheap draft picks as we can hope to hit on. And honestly, like, Seattle's the model here. Like, if they can get a draft like Seattle had, where we got two great rookie tackles, not that they need two of them, but if we can get to that point where it's like Ryman's a cheap, good left tackle, and we got, young corners that we get on day 2 and day 3 that are top 25 to 30 in the league, and like, if we can get to that point where they hit on one draft to get a good, cheap layer of talent around the core, and then they somehow get better at the quarterback position through the draft, and they get lucky and they find a young kid they like, they can do that kind of Seattle-ish accelerated teardown. But like you said, this is a project. It is a project of the highest order. And unfortunately for them, I think it's going to be harder for them to pull off than Seattle, because they don't have the same, or rather the amount of high-value assets that Seattle had to work with. So the margin for error is smaller, and the level of difficulty is higher. I'm not saying it's not impossible for them to bounce back next year, but it's tough.
The timeline is probably 2 years, and I know Colts fans don't want to hear that, but even if you grab a highly talented rookie quarterback, even if he has a record-setting year, a Justin Herbert year as a rookie, it's still going to be another year before you're truly competing. So that's 2 years right there. Like, even if, unless he was in the building as an understudy and could get those snaps out of the way in the second half of this year, there might be a chance with a Seattle-type draft that you could be good next year. Without that player already in the building, it's unlikely.
3 down, number 2 here. Even though I'm a Texans fan and I love relishing in the Colts' anguish, there's only so much I can take of it per day. Getting to 3 down number 2. Let's talk about the Rams, who I completely forgot they even lost that game yesterday because it almost seemed impossible that they were going to lose that game, and they found a way to lose that game. Like, they were completely controlling it for 58 minutes, 55, 58 minutes, something like that. And then just Tom Brady, who they hadn't really done anything all day until we get to the last drive, and then they're just marching down the field. And that was a gut punch of a loss. Absolute gut punch of a loss. Almost like an unbelievable, how the hell do you blow that kind of loss? But they managed, because the Rams this year, these are not your older brother's Rams, man. They got problems.
No, this is a shaken team. This is a team that has problems that have now gone all the way down to the core, all the way to the foundation. The head coach talked about it. McVay talked about it in his press conference at the end of yesterday. The offensive line the Rams suffered in the offseason with Whitworth retiring and Corbett moving on were bigger than anybody imagined, and they thought they had folks to step in, as they have when they've suffered previous losses. They thought that was going to work. Injuries came into play. Stafford slipped a little bit. OBJ is not there to stir in the occasional big play that keeps a drive going. And the sort of death spiral that they've been in was on. So the Rams offense this season has scored 10. That was the game we were at. 31-20. They bounced back in the next 2 weeks, and we thought, okay. Then 9, 10, 24, 14, and yesterday 13. 27th in scoring for the Rams. Now, let that just settle. 6 rushing and 8 passing TDs total, basically 1 passing TD a week, which, again, for the Rams, Cooper Kupp, Matt Stafford, the folks Tyler Higbee even, nope, not the same old Rams. They just can't sustain drives. We've talked about this with other teams, notably the Packers. One of the things we said in the offseason about them, we didn't say it about the Rams. We thought the Rams were going to be able to continue their winning ways. They still look explosive at times, but it's inconsistent and it's not the norm. It almost feels like, look, that's the thing they can still do. But that's not going to win games. And this particular loss to the Bucs and the fashion in which it happened really has set a sort of pall over that organization. Jordan Rodriguez, who writes about them for The Athletic, one of the best journalists going right now, has a different tone in her coverage starting last night, which is, this is a step back kind of moment. Look at a reset, much like what the Bears did during their mini bye, but nobody was predicting the Rams and the Bears were going to be anywhere near the same stratosphere offensively. And right now, hate to say it, but the Bears are better than the Rams on offense. And if you had that bet at MGM in the offseason, go cash it.
It's not even particularly close, man.
Yeah, and nobody had that bet. Like, these are two things that very few people saw coming and nobody saw coming together. And the Rams are in a place where they really do have to sit down and go, okay, this is almost like us starting over in the middle, which is a very difficult thing for a team to do after its bye week. Rams have already had their bye. They got a lot of work to do. I'm not going to write them off, but I'm going to start warming up the band.
My main takeaway from it, honestly, because my head was going through this thought experiment as Tom was marching down the field. Would Brian Burns have changed that game? Possibly, maybe, in the last drive. But then again, Tom was getting the ball out in like 2.2, 2.3 seconds. So maybe he wouldn't have. Maybe he would not have had the time on a snap-to-snap basis to get a sack and end the game on that last drive and get the Rams a victory so they can limp into another week and hopefully try to keep a team under 15 points. Maybe he would have affected that game. Realistically, though, probably not. And will Brian Burns, or would have Brian Burns, saved their season if they pulled off that trade for 2 first-round picks and a second-round pick? Actually, the exact offer. Yeah. It was 24 to 2025 first and a 2023 second-round pick. Like, would that have saved their season? Probably not. And I almost feel like McVay and Snead, and I know you mentioned this, they're using these picks like they don't expect to be around to use them anyway. Like they're like, yeah, fuck it, we'll trade them away because we're not gonna use those picks. We're not gonna be in the building. What do we care what the next regime has to work with? Like I feel like they are going all in on like let's get back-to-back Super Bowls and then go sit on a beach for the next 50 years. Like that's how they're using these picks. It's like they don't care about the future because the future isn't their problem. That's the sense that I get here. And Fitterer on the other side is like, why would I trade away Brian Burns for a first-round pick in 2024 and 2025? He doesn't think he's going to be there to make those picks either. So it's like two GMs that are dealing with picks that neither one actually expects to use. And I think that's why that deal dissolved. But like, I truly feel like McVay and Snead are running this team like they don't give a shit about 2025. They care about 2022, maybe 2023, and they're out. Not that I blame them. Like, it's long hours. They got themselves a ring. Like, I get it. But they don't care about 2025. That's not their problem.
No, and Fitterer to a point was like, what good is a 2024 first? Because all I'll have to do is go pick an edge rusher who I hope turns into Brian Burns.
Yeah.
So why do I short myself Brian Burns' services until 2024 and then just hope to have to hit again? Like, I already hit. That's what draft picks are for. So there's a little bit of that thrown in as well. But this team is a bit like the Colts, and I didn't think I'd ever be saying that, in that they are not one player or one issue away. They have multiple issues right now. One player, Brian Burns or anybody else, wasn't going to solve that for them. And while it might not be a teardown, they have been playing very much for the short term, and now they need to rebuild the foundation a little bit. And those are two different approaches to team building, and they need to sort of throttle back and get the trenches right again, at least on the offensive side, before they really start going forward again.
Yeah. 3 down, number 3. How often do we get to talk great about the Bears and talk shit about the Packers in one episode each day? Not very often, so we're going to take our chance.
That's right. And you were going to trash the Colts as a Texans fan, so this is just a candy-filled episode.
It's the only good episode we've had all year.
Yeah, no. Many of our fans would probably say that, but no. I've never seen Aaron Rodgers more frustrated than I did against Detroit on Sunday. He was absolutely livid. He was furious. And I've seen him furious when a receiver blows a route, when an offensive lineman blows a blitz pickup and he gets hit. He will absolutely lash out and let somebody hear it. But then he returns to that cool, calm, collected demeanor that we've seen, the silent assassin that just goes out there and smiles and makes plays against your team. I don't care who your team is. He's done it against everybody. But make no mistake, losing to the Lions, a team he has openly discounted and written off for free wins for years. These were speed bumps for him. He started his career 15-1 versus Detroit. Mm-hmm. He doesn't take them seriously, nor has he ever. This is a massive blow to his professional pride, to be looking at the scoreboard for the entire game going, guys, if we can score a touchdown, we're going to put them away. It's not like Detroit boat raced them out to 30 points and he was just dejected from halftime on. He knew that if they could score a touchdown, they'd probably win this game. They couldn't against Detroit, and that matters. To flip it to the other side, we talk about Rodgers a lot and how much and how out of character this season has been for him. The Packers D is way too good to be 15th in scoring defense. The offense is 27th in scoring right now. This is not where Packers fans, Packers front office, Packers players are used to being. They have won and won and won and won. They have run that division much like the Patriots ran the AFC East for years and years and years and years. And now they're not. And it's not a fluke. It's not an error. It's not a mistake. It's the sum total of many decisions over the past several years that are coming to fruition. And everybody's having to open their eyes on a Monday morning and go, oh, it's not just that we're not going to win this division. We're a bad football team right now on multiple levels. Again, nowhere near one or two players away from fixing this. We don't have answers for the rest of the season, and we're not sure we have them beyond that either, because if Aaron hangs it up, that's what they went all in for, and they really are going to be back to zero, and Packers fans have no idea after the last 30 years what that looks like.
My main takeaway just from the game itself, from a schematic perspective, something I found fascinating, this was almost like a mirror image game in the sense that all of the problems in this game were the total opposite of the problems that had happened in all the games leading up to this. You know, I did the film room episode talking about how they're really bad at sustaining long drives, and they were all of a sudden really good at sustaining drives in week 8 through the run game. And particularly they would stall out at midfield. Well, they didn't have any problems sustaining drives in this game, but with the pass game, Allen Lazard made a huge difference in terms of being able to get chunk plays from midfield with the pass game, which they had not particularly been able to do. Ironically, in weeks 1 through 8, when they got in the red zone, they were actually pretty effective. This game, when they got in the red zone, and they got in the red zone a lot, they turned it over 3 times. So it was the complete opposite problem than what they had been experiencing the rest of the year. And I think that is the mark of a bad football team, when every week it's something new. And they can't find any sort of consistency or like, oh, we just got to fix this one thing. Like the Eagles, they just got to fix the run defense. That's the one thing. You know, the Bills, with all their injuries, especially on defense, they just got to stay healthy. That's like the one thing that's screwing them up. And the Niners, they can't stay healthy. It's the one thing. You know, you look at the Jets, where it's like, oh, defense is there, run game is there. We just need Zach Wilson to stop turning the freaking ball over. Like, it's one issue you got to work on. The Packers, it's something new every week. And that's a bad football team, when you can't pin down what's wrong, and so everything's wrong. And I think we are in the middle of the end of the Aaron Rodgers era. Whether he stays next year, I can't remember off the top of my head how the contract is structured. I think it's basically a series of 1-year deals, if I recall correctly. So this theoretically could just be the last year and he sails off into the sunset. But like, from Aaron's perspective, he knows they're not a year away. They're not. Like, they are not deep enough. They are not a year away in the NFC. So I feel like he might not even want to stick around for it either, you know? And the Packers, like, they're up against it with the cap. They're giving him fucking $50 million a year. Like, it's best for everyone, and it's best for the Packers especially, if this just ends after 2022, because they are in desperate need of a rebuild. They really, really need that money. They need assets. Not to bring it up again, they need to do what Seattle did, which is just say, screw it. We're resetting. We hit on one draft class, and we'll see if we can get back quickly. But like, if they go down this path of paying Aaron $1 gazillion and trying to make it work with Allen Lazard as a number one and hoping Romeo Doubs turns into, you know, the next Devontae Adams, or, you know, Watson staying healthy, it's going to be like this next year too. So I think it's over.
And the one reason they can't do what Seattle is doing is Aaron probably doesn't want to be traded. And so they won't get assets back. If he retires, it is a relief. It's about $10.5 million dead cap if he retires, and then, you know, pretty much he's off the books. Obviously, his bonuses are already paid, but they don't get any draft picks for that. And Seattle got a load of draft picks for Russell Wilson because he was willing to be traded to the Broncos. So they've got a tough road to hoe. They don't have a ton of answers, and it could cause a major shakeup because, again, Green Bay's never really seen this level of upset or transition in the last 3 decades.
Oh, man. On one hand, I relish it, but on the other, I feel bad for a lot of the Packers fans I am friends with, which I do have a lot of Packers, like especially Tom Grassi. God, I feel bad for Tom Grassi because he's going through it, man. Like, it's every week, it's a new thing, every week. So I feel bad for Packer fans. I don't necessarily feel bad for Aaron Rodgers, but I'm ready for the bad man to leave, EJ. I'm ready for the bad man to go.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's likely. We'll probably see that.
All right, let's get to 3 fun. Even though Packers being bad is pretty fun. 3 fun. Number 1, Joe Mixon went nuclear this week. And I say this as somebody who had Justin Fields getting like 48 points, and then I look over and Trevor Sikkema, my arch nemesis in our fantasy league, had like 53 just from Mixon. I was like, really? The one time Justin Fields can carry me, and you got friggin' Joe Mixon? 22 for $153, 4 rushing touchdowns, another 4 for 58 through the air, and another receiving touchdown for a total of 26 touches, 211 yards, 5 touchdowns. An absurd performance. And it wasn't just, oh, we're going to feed him goal line carries. Believe me, he did get goal line carries, but there was one from like 15 yards out on duo where he pressed it, linebacker came up, so he's like, all right, I'm bouncing this thing. It's one-on-one on the corner on the edge, and he like chopped the corner's hand down and then just kept going. And I'm like, God, like that's a guy who not just getting schemed touches in the red zone, but somebody who can create on his own and do it all by himself. He's one of the best running backs in the league, and happy to see him finally blow up like we know he can.
It's unfortunate that it happened against you. Good on you, Trev. We love you. But Joe Mixon was the fantasy daisy cutter this week. He was the 10,000-pound bomb that you drop to just level the forest. If you have him and nobody else, you could probably win most of your matchups. He's not been great at breaking tackles this year. In fact, that rate's been really low for him, which is uncharacteristic. Usually he's pretty good at it. From the first score on Sunday, the way he looked at the camera, you knew it was going to be a good day. And for me, a good day is like 135 yards, 2 touchdowns. Like, that would have been a good day. But he just looked like, yep, I'm going to be here all day. Like, I expect to be here. And then he just continued to go off. Like, it just didn't stop. And it's really cool because Mixon, when he's running like that, and that's, more often. Again, some days it's going to pop, some days it's not. Obviously, on Sunday it popped. He's so talented. He's right up there with the top 5-7 running backs in the league. Hasn't necessarily been showing that every week this year, but this was his week, and good on you, Joe. Glad everybody gets to see it because it was a hell of a lot of fun.
Yeah. 3 fun number 2. We got to talk about Kirk Cousins, and not just for, him showing off the 6-pack on the plane, doing the dance, everything like that. Side note, Kirk kind of shredded. Didn't realize that. That dude takes care of himself. I was like, shit, all right, Kirk's been hitting the gym. But beyond that, on the field, he was dealing. Like, I know the box score and the points might not represent it, but he had some throws in that game where I was like, all right, microwave Kirk was on this week, and he was he fitted into Hawkinson, who immediately, by the way, became a big part of the offense. He was connected with Justin Jefferson. Like, everything about that Vikings pass game screamed should have been 30 points. Didn't get to 30, but I'll be damned. Kirk played really well in that game.
This is one of those don't stat scout. Stat scouting is bad. If you look at the stats and you go 22 of 40, you'd go, oh, Cousins, come on. If you look at the tape, you're shocked by that number like I was. He was on point throughout the game. Even the interception was not his fault. Yes, it was a contested catch, but it was one-on-one. I would have thrown that ball with leverage too. He was making absurd passes throughout this one. The one to Dalvin Cook in the end zone is specifically okay, you're in your bag. You can just throw anything now. Mm-hmm. Little curler back towards the end zone line, over coverage into Dalvin's hand before he goes out of bounds. Like, just an absurd sort of little layer throw. He did it right in stride, just easily in stride with his day, too. He was just on point. Passes were where they needed to be. Justin Jefferson's got a very strong case for I'm the best receiver in the league. Like, he's still got some competition for that title, but he is in that conversation. And if he's not, I don't want to hear your conversation because you're wrong. Like, Justin Jefferson is a weapon at all levels. And Hawkinson is amazing. 9 for 70, being with the team for less than a week. Unreal. Like, most people I don't think probably appreciate how difficult that is to go from one scheme to another. and just step right in and have basically almost 10 catches for 70 yards. Look like a part of this offense going forward that they've been missing. Really interesting game. Again, the score didn't show it, but Cousins absolutely deserved his little dance party on the plane because he was microwave Kirk, hot Kirk, whatever, good Kirk, whatever you want to call him. When he's at that level, he can throw with anybody in the league, and Sunday was one of those days.
And then finally, three fun. Number 3, the Jags themselves are fun again, and especially Travis Etienne. Foot injuries can be kind of finicky to come back from sometimes, and you never really know what you're going to get. But Etienne himself, over the last 5 weeks, has been on a tear, just absolutely destroying front sevens, and especially when he gets the edge, that kind of curvilinear speed. And we talked about this on the live stream, but because he's kind of duck-footed in his gait, which in itself, a lot of physical therapists and doctors and everything like that, when they analyzed him coming out, said that he runs like a guy who puts a lot of stress on certain ligaments, and it could cause him to sustain injuries, lower body injuries specifically, which unfortunately he did. But the advantage of that duck-footedness is that when he gets to the edge, if you look at the GPS data, he's actually faster when he's turning upfield to get the edge than when he's actually moving straight down the boundary. Because when you have that kind of gait from a physiological perspective, and imagine this is the inside of the field, when you're turning and wheeling upfield and your toe is naturally pointed inside and kind of it's almost like weaponizing the force to slingshot your way down the field. I'm trying to visualize this for people that aren't watching the video feed, and it makes him freaking impossible to tackle on toss plays, or if you can hit the front side on outside zone, anything like that where a linebacker has to take an angle and get to a spot, and they're not used to somebody moving 21.5 miles an hour around the corner. They're used to them only getting that speed once they turn upfield. If they're already at that speed, they're freaking impossible to hit. And so they've done a really good job of kind of emphasizing how fast he gets around the corner and using that to their advantage, because he is burning pursuit angles every single week because of how he runs. Not to mention the fact that he's ripped off some really nice inside gains too on power and counter and all that kind of stuff. He's a fascinating runner, a unique runner from a physiological perspective. And because of that, he's more effective than most running backs are, because he can do things physically that most running backs cannot do.
I am so pleased to watch you stop shoveling with both hands right now and digging yourself a hole on that one. Let me simplify for you, folks. Travis Etienne's really fast around the corner.
Oh, well, shit. I could have just...
Anyways, he's not as fast in a straight line. If you've seen when he's gotten caught this year, it has been when he's in a straight line and basically kind of tops out. He's really quick, and this is the difference between quick and fast. He accelerates really quickly, whether it's in a straight line or around the corner. He is faster. He carries more speed around a corner than most people do. But when he gets caught, as he sort of tops out, he doesn't have that, people talk about fifth gear or whatever else, to really open up into. And that's when he gets caught. But in the short area, good luck. As such, he's fifth in rushing and has less attempts than anybody else in the top 9. So efficiency-wise, he's crushing it. He's 320 yards away from 1,000 right now. We're at week 9. He gets 320 more yards. He gets 1,000 yards, and he already has 170-plus receiving. So if you're talking about all-purpose yards, he's almost there already. Trevor Lawrence himself has thrown for more yards than 3 guys we've talked about in this podcast. Jalen Hurts, Kirk Cousins, or Tua. That's pretty damn impressive.
Tua's missed a couple games, but still.
Devin Lloyd, who was a podcast favorite coming into this year's draft season, had a pick and a sack on Sunday. Used those pass rush skills that we talked about. So if you're a longtime bootleg listener, you already knew about that. Wasn't a surprise. And Juwan Smoot had 2 sacks on Sunday, 3.5 in the last 2 weeks. He's been on a little heater of his own. So this team in general is really cool. Trevor's distributing the ball. It's not one receiver leading the way. He's hitting Zay Jones and Marvin Jones Jr. Even this what we thought was a crazy serious overpay for their top free agent has been contributing. Christian Kirk's looked like a bit of a different receiver as well. So this is a cool, fun, different team, much in the way that I talked about Seattle being, different than the way they were last year. Obviously a different situation going on in Jacksonville, but this is a cool team that can press other teams on both sides of the ball, and they're just fun to watch.
I do think that they have some pieces that give me a lot of optimism. I do think that looking forward to 2023 is when we're really going to see that jump, assuming that Calvin Ridley is going to get to play in 2023, because I think he's kind of the missing piece here to get Trevor a true number one. But everything that I've seen out of Etienne, and even some of the things that I've seen out of Trevor, just want him to clean up the red zone picks. Some of the things I've seen out of Trevor are really encouraging. Some of the things I've seen from the young defensive pieces are encouraging. If Calvin Ridley's allowed to play in 2023 and they get some new warm bodies at corner at this point, I'll take fucking anything at this point for new corners. They're probably going to make a run at the AFC South title. Again, not quite there yet, but they're not getting blown out consistently. A lot of their losses are fairly tight. And you're seeing these things every week where you're like, I think this can work. And they do rip off some really nice, good team wins. So I think the Jags are fun, even if their record doesn't reflect it. And I think we can see the roadmap to sustainable long-term success. Not 2017 success where it's a flash in the pan. We want sustainable, long-term, every year success. I think they're on their way.
They've got the quarterback, and it seems like, again, they've got a coaching staff that's willing to adapt whatever they're doing to that quarterback. That's a huge piece of the puzzle. They keep adding pieces around those young pieces that they have on both sides of the ball. Yeah, we could see them basically placing a bid for the top of the division for the next 2 to 3 years if they do.
That's their goal, at least, for the folks over in Duval. All right. One of the last segments of the show here, and our favorite segment of the show, the bootleg shot of the week. All right, shot of the week, EJ. I have my shot this week. A wonderful Dorley's 12-year. Now you might be saying, Brett, why are you shooting a 12-year rum? Because it's delicious and it tastes like syrup and it goes down easy. Pretty easy choice to make for me. And it's only like a $30 bottle, so I don't feel like I'm wasting a sipping rum. I can get a new one anytime I want.
No, I think that's good. And, I'm EJ Snyder, and I approve this message. Dorley's is great stuff. I have Milagro Blanco today, chilled. And that'll be my celebratory shot for, drumroll please,
Bruce Irvin. Making his return to the Pacific Northwest and tackling Saquon Barkley by using the almost lifeless corpse of Daniel Jones.
So it just proves you can go home again, apparently.
Yeah, people love that just because, A, it's unconventional, and B, it's Bruce Irvin, man. It's good to see him back in the league. We love it. We love it.
It's good to hear the Bruce chants in Lumenfield, but Bruce, here's to you for what was one of the most entertaining Shot of the Week nominations of the entire year.
Ooh. I still prefer it as a sip. Ooh, man, it's hotter as a shot.
Yeah, you stack it up. The 12 gets on you.
Hello there.
Brett's awake now.
It's okay. It's 11:30 in the morning. It's close to noon.
Let that be a lesson to you, bootleggers. Choose your shots carefully.
Okay. Oh, man. Didn't expect that.
And don't take them out of a bowling ball if you can help it.
Yeah. By the way, how's your syphilis?
Dead. Along with everything else that came with it. That stuff doesn't last when it comes out of a bowling ball finger.
Oh, God. But does Bruce Irvin count as the last surviving member of the Legion of Boom? Or because he went away and came back? Are we still counting that?
I don't know. It seems like an interrupted tenure. We'll need a ruling.
Yeah.
I don't know who would give us that ruling, but we'll need a ruling.
Seahawks fan, chime in if you still consider him.
Maybe I'll ask my buddy Brandon. I'll ask Brandon Scholes whether the Seahawks faithful still consider Bruce a surviving member of the Legion.
Nominees this week. We've got a whole bunch of really good ones to pick from. We narrowed it down to 4, and nothing against any other ones that were nominated, but we couldn't do like 9 or 10. We got to get it to 4. First one, Cordell Patterson, friend/favorite of the show, completely running over a defender to get himself in the end zone, and this was his first game back after, I think it was like a 4 or 5 week absence, something like that. Clearly fully healthy, putting that 230-pound frame to good use, running over a defender. Rock Ya-Sin, straight up out of the WWE, suplexing Marvin Jones Jr., plopping him right on the shoulder. Hell of a hit by him in the open field. Chigakonkwo, another show favorite, bumbling his way on a screen, breaking like 4 tackles, getting a 40-yard gain to set up the Titans' first score of the evening. And also, by the way, people were saying, Chigakonkwo, who the hell is that? You're going to know the name. Going to know the name.
Nobody that listens to Bootleg said that. And if you did, turn in your membership card at the door. Nobody. Literally, over on the Bootleg Football Clips channel, we have an extended interview with the guy from the Shrine Bowl. We talked him up throughout the entire draft season as one of those players who was going to be really interesting with usage at the next level. And he just flat out wanted to make a play for Malik Willis. Like, he wanted to make a play early in that game and just set a tone and be like, throw it to me, man. I'll get you yards. And that was a pure effort play. It was great to see. Great guy. Really glad to see him having success. Just as an aside, couple of tight ends that Bootleg was really excited about. James Mitchell had a catch last week and another big one this week. Cade Otton was basically the final drive.
Cade Otton, yeah.
Basically the final drive for the Bucs. If you listened
guy.
to Bootleg, you knew about Chigakonkwo, about James Mitchell, about Cade Otton. So nobody that was a bootlegger said, who's Chig? Other folks, maybe, but get them to listen too, because then they won't not know.
Final nominee of the week, Nick Bolton, who I will admit has exceeded my expectations since getting into the league. I thought he was like a Denzel Perryman type where, okay, we're a sawed-off shotgun in between the hashes and we could do one thing and one thing really well. He's actually turned into a very well-rounded linebacker for the Chiefs and made a hell of a hit out in space for a TFL, arguably slamming the coffin shut on the Titans, who offensively weren't doing much anyway. But that third down stop basically ended the game, in my opinion. There was still a little bit of life left, but not really after that. They needed that first down. Couldn't get it because of Nick Bolton making a play out in space, and a hell of a hit it was.
Huge credit to Spags and the defensive coaches in KC. I also thought Nick Bolton was a good player, a solid player against the run. Really kind of in between the numbers, but not great in pass coverage. He's improved there. Not necessarily great as a blitzer. He's improved there. Like, he's a young cog for them going forward on defense, and I did not see that one coming. So big credit to the KC defensive coaches there.
If you want to vote for any of these, again, pin comment down below. You can drop your vote for any of these 4 nominees. All right, let's get to the final segment of the day, our Week 10, or Week 10, right? Week 10 already watch list.
Yeah, Week 10 watch list headlined by Browns, Dolphins. Both teams playing pretty well, and it's going to be a fascinating matchup style sort of clash, and I'm really interested to see who wins. Browns headed down to play the Dolphins in their home stadium. We'll see how that one turns out. Vikings, Bills. Again, with Kirk Cousins playing as well as he did in that offense kind of clicking. Defense kicking up too. Danielle Hunter had a couple of sacks. Like, interesting game. If you'd penciled this one early in the season, I would have said Bills going away. After both of these teams' games last week, not sure that's the case. It's much closer than a lot of people maybe would have liked, especially if you're a Buffalo fan. Broncos, Titans. Broncos defense is the reason I'm interested in this game. Broncos defense has been basically tearing the doors off the rest of the league, and because of their offensive struggles have been largely ignored. The Titans, as we said with KC, match up very interestingly against that. They are a differently built team. it's just one of those games I'm going to be watching. It might not be close. It might not even be good, but I really want to see how it works out. And then the oddly fascinated is Jaguars-Chiefs for all the reasons we've previously mentioned about the Jaguars. They're a fun team. They can play with folks. Can they play with the big boys? The Chiefs are an established top-tier team in the NFL. How's this one going to work? Are the Chiefs just going to wipe the field with the Jaguars? Or are the Jaguars going to be the sort of young upstarts that go, not so fast. We got some good players of our own. So watch list for Week 10, full, and lots of good games.
I kind of feel like the Jags might give them a game. I
They
really
could.
do. I really do. Because I think there's some things that the Jags do well that are similar to what the Titans did well with them in terms of, like you saw the first half running game, from the Titans against the Chiefs, like, hitting on a couple of those outside zones. Like, Jags can do that, but they also have a more consistent passing threat than the Titans did with Malik Willis, and B, with the entire Titans receiving core essentially being hurt. I do think that there's at least more complementary threats than what the Titans have to offer through the air for the Jags. So I think if they can hit on some of those same runs that Derrick Henry hit, plus sprinkle in some nice Trevor throws, which we know he can do, they got a shot here. And defensively speaking, I think the game plan from the Titans is a pretty good blueprint for how to handle KC, which is press the absolute shit out of Travis Kelce and make them beat you with everybody else. So far, they haven't been able to do that. So you take Kelce out of the game, force MVS or Sky Moore or whoever to take over. Like, I don't know. That game screams closer than it should be to me.
And Devin Lloyd is a fascinating chess piece for Mahomes because he can play Kelce. He can spy a little bit. He's not necessarily going to match him to the edge, but Mahomes is not going to get a lot of those free yards you saw against the Titans. Like, Devin Lloyd is that flexible sort of, Mr. Fantastic piece that can just show up anywhere and really gum up some of what the Chiefs like to do in the middle of the field. So it'll be fun.
There were some tackles that David Long missed last night that I don't think Devin Lloyd would have missed. But that's just
David Long's had a pretty good season, but Devin Lloyd
he's a good player, but Pat got him a couple times in space, and I don't
100%.
I don't think what happened to Lloyd.
And kept drives going because of it.
Mm-hmm.
You made a comment about the fastest 4.8 player ever.
He is.
He can scoot when he needs to, and Devin Lloyd can scoot as well. So, again, a few less, and if you take a few less of those drive-extending plays, what do you get? And the answer is, could be a close, fun game.
Yep. Bet. Hell of a week in Week 9, and I think it should be even better in Week 10, looking at some of the games we got coming down the pipe. We are fully in the playoff hunt in both of the Eastern divisions. Both of the Northern divisions, I think, got a little bit spicier this week as well. And even in the West, there's a little bit of going on over there, too, especially with the Seahawks rise and hopefully the 49ers getting healthier. These playoff races are going to come down to the wire. Excited to see how we do for the last couple months of the season. We are now in November football, and we're going to have a lot more crazy shit to talk about. Make sure to stop by on Thursday for the Falcons-Panthers live stream to see if the Falcons can keep pace in that NFC South race, and we'll see what life the Panthers have left. Probably not a whole lot, but we'll see. We'll drink through it together, everybody. But see you guys here on Thursday, and then next week for the big episode. And until then, later.
Take care.